in the old days, I think my favorite March Madness is I always filled it out from the morning newspaper on Monday. Gets the tactile feel of writing the pen on the newspaper. Always good. But we live in a digital age. I'm not sure if newspapers exist anymore.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into Monkey Knife Fight's March Madness show. We are back. It's been about 6 weeks since we've talked to you guys, but here we are. That is, in my opinion, the best week on the sports calendar from just everything going on. We got NFL free agency. We got baseball starting up. We got NBA, NHL getting ready to get towards the playoffs. We got guys in the NBA dropping 60 points a night now. And who better to talk it all over with than the fantastic Rotowire duo of Nick Whalen and John McKechnie. Boys, been a while. I missed you. Nick, how you doing, man? I know you're Badgers. How you feeling?
Well, I'm not feeling great about it. Wisconsin is kind of in the same category as a Providence team that I know we're going to talk about as, when you look at like the luck metrics, like they're way up there. Every game seems like it comes down to the wire. It doesn't matter who they're playing. They're capable of going and beating Purdue. They're capable of going and beating Michigan State on the road. They're also capable of losing at home to Nebraska with, the Big Ten title on the line. So as always, I'm not super confident in this team, but I think we got a solid draw in round one playing in Milwaukee, just outside my window here. That's going to be really fun. And of course, the biggest thing I think for Wisconsin, getting the late Friday night game, which I feel like historically the Badgers are always playing at like 1:30 on Thursday, and you're just kind of, you're not really able to zero in. 8:50 p.m. local time start on Friday night. Could not ask for more.
That's pretty great. And I'm actually a little surprised. I thought, during football season, and you still have it up there, you got your Ron Dane poster. I thought we'd have like a Frank Kaminsky, a Yogi Ferrell, Sam Decker poster up to go with this. No,
I should have dug up my Salim Stoudemire Arizona jersey, but that is buried deep in storage. It might even be at my parents' house. I'm not sure, but that's a good point. I just kind of have trouble. The Ron Dane thing it's such a statement piece. It's not really something I want to take down. I kind of view it as, like if an American flag touches the ground, you have to burn it. Like something like that. You want to keep that above ground. If that touches the ground, I'd have to get rid of it.
Fair enough. And then we got John McKechnie here as well. John, surprised we got to pull you away from Georgia's pro day today as we're recording this, but the Bulldogs basketball team not so great. So I think we were talking about this before the show. The goal of this show should be to find your team for this tournament. How you doing, man?
Doing great. Glad to be on. I think most of the dogs said what they needed to say at the combine. So, not a huge deal, not a huge inconvenience for me to jump on now. But yeah, obviously Georgia's basketball program, essentially non-existent. I famously never went to a game while I was a student there. So not a huge deal to me. Honestly, I'm glad that Crean's gone, but grew up a huge Maryland fan. Actually, I got my Maryland 2002 national championship. Shout out Juan Dixon, shout out Lonnie Baxter. I got that shirt on, but yeah, they're obviously in a rough patch that they haven't been in since probably like before Gary Williams. So hopefully they get that figured out. But yeah, so now I just am viewing this March Madness with fresh eyes, ready to see all sorts of random crazy stories, upsets, all that good stuff. Just full on rooting for chaos mode. But yes, fellas, if you could point me in the direction of a team that a Cinderella with some serious bounce in her shoes, let me know.
Yeah, we'll do our best. But I guess first question for you, as we're trying to narrow down the criteria here for your rooting interest. Does it have to be an SEC school, or are we going anywhere?
Preferably not an SEC school.
Okay, not an SEC.
I think the SEC fans in general get the rap of rooting for the conference. I don't like anybody. I just like the dogs. Like I don't find Auburn to be an endearing story, nor do I find Alabama to be an endearing story. I don't like Tennessee. So, let's look away from the Southeastern Conference, and I think we'll all be happier with what we find.
Very good. All right. So before we get into talking about our brackets and player projections and MKF contests, I want to let you guys know about this fabulous contest that Bally's is running this week and for the rest of the month. Bally's Interactive has announced the launch of Bally Bracket. It's a free-to-play game that awards a jackpot prize of $100 million to whomever picks all 63 games of the NCAA Men's Division I basketball tournament. You can click the link in the description below to sign up and win today. We're basically doing the Warren Buffett thing, but here at Bally's. So good luck to whoever can get that nice combination of all six and go 63-0. All right, so we'll move on. Anyways, so when you guys are filling out your brackets, do you have a method to the madness? Do you go with like best defense, best Ken Pom, mascots? Sometimes works the best out, best 3-point shooting team. Nick, how do you navigate your bracket when you're filling it out?
I feel like this year I did put a little more thought in than I normally do. Did a lot of referencing Ken Pom, referenced a lot of the tools on this kind of cool website that I found, Rotowire.com, that has a lot of great college basketball content. But I don't know. Historically, I like to go by feel. Like I think if you're putting too much of like a science into it, and this really applies to like fantasy football, fantasy basketball as well. Like obviously you want to do some preparation. You don't want to just be blindly picking 16s to beat ones. But I kind of like the personal nature, I guess, of it, of saying like, you know what, I'm taking San Diego State to beat Kansas in the second round. I'm not going to give you a good reason why, but I'm going to brag when it happens, or I'm kind of going to eat crow if it doesn't happen. Like if you're paying for like a service to fill out your bracket for you, or you're spending 5 hours trying to decide between Iowa and Richmond in round one, like I think that kind of takes the fun out of it. I kind of like to go on first instinct, and I will say I submit one bracket each year. I am not a fan of the entering 5 pools with 5 different brackets. You got to have some sense of integrity.
Very good. And so is that when you make your first bracket, is that what you're going with, or will you tweak it a little bit as you go on throughout the week from Sunday to Thursday morning? Yeah. So like tweak it. Okay.
So, I mean, I always, I think as far as I can remember back, I always fill out a bracket as soon as I can. I'm so excited once the bracket is announced. So I always do a dry run on Sunday. I revisit it on Monday. And I'll probably revisit it one more time tomorrow morning and make my final tweaks. But once it's locked in, obviously you can't make any changes after that, but got to submit one bracket. That's the key.
Very good. Very good. And John, last week when we started talking about this show we were going to do, you mentioned that you were cramming for this like it's a final exam. So here we are. This is the final exam. How did your bracket process go?
Yeah, the bracket process, in the old days, I think my favorite March Madness is I always filled it out from the morning newspaper on Monday. Gets the tactile feel of writing the pen on the newspaper, always good. But we live in a digital age. I'm not sure if newspapers exist anymore, so have done these fully online. I wish I could adhere to Nick's sheets of integrity, but not going to lie, if I'm entering 3 pools, there's probably going to be a little bit of variance. It doesn't make me a good person, but it just I like to kind of cover my back a little bit more. And as far as the cramming, the preparation, it basically boiled down to a lot of feel, a lot of who's hot at the right time. Those are always the teams that I like to ride with. Like Ken Pom is such an unbelievable resource, but you can just kind of get bogged down in just like, oh, what this team's effective field goal rate, but this team has this average height. What do I do with this? So I think that at a certain point you can just kind of overthink every little detail and try to like make too much of a given metric as if that's like the hidden key to what an upset's going to be, when in reality, that's a funny thing about March Madness is a lot of things aren't going to make sense over these next couple of weeks. There's going to be teams that lose for no reason that you possibly could have expected beforehand. There's going to be a team or two that go on a run that you'd never thought possible. I'm sure there's a trendy Cinderella or two that's going to get knocked out right away. Everyone's going to be like ripping up their bracket, and then just someone that they immediately eliminated from their bracket gets onto the Sweet 16. So try not to get too bogged down into it. And so that may or may not work out as the best process for this year, but we're going to see how it goes.
Yeah, I saw a couple interesting stats here. So I think since 2015 or 2016, a 5 seed or lower has made the Final Four every single year. So something to keep in mind there. Another one is, I believe, a 13 seed has beaten a 4 like 7 out of the last 8. I think Vermont is the sexy upset pick for some reason, which I don't quite understand. But ESPN has them at like 28% of the brackets submitted so far have Vermont beating Arkansas. And another one, I believe, is South Dakota State beating Providence is like the number 2 upset country. And we'll talk about the Friars in a minute here as I'm wearing my Providence colors, even though I went to URI. And that is a big rivalry, by the way. The second Saturday in December every year, the Battle of the Ocean State. Providence has won 8 out of the last 11. So it's a bit of a sore spot, especially since we lost Danny Hurley to UConn.
Yeah. Well, John, hold on. Where do we come in on this, John? Wearing your Riavls gear, even under circumstances like this where your team's not in the tournament, is this fair or foul?
It's just the colors. It's the colors. I got the black, the white, and the gray. It's not an actual Providence shirt. It's an Under Armour, but
it can vary state by state. As a Maryland fan, it was cool to see UMBC. I mean, as just a fan of basketball, it was cool to see UMBC pull that upset over Virginia. So it really depends on the level of competition that your other in-state schools are in. And I feel like the state of Rhode Island, the great ocean state, you want good representation. So I understand it from Dan's perspective, but for like, if you move this to Georgia, like I would never root for Georgia Tech or something like that. I might root for Georgia State though. That type of deal. Like weren't they a really fun team like 5-6 years ago? They hit the 3 and the coach tore his Achilles or whatever. Yeah, yes. Good stuff there.
RJ Hunter.
It's a state by state, case by case basis, but in general, not rooting for the rivals. But I can see where Dan's coming from on this one.
Yeah, Rhode Island actually has 2 schools in the tournament. Bryant is in the play-in round on Wednesday night before we record this. So pretty good representation for Little Rhodey there in this tournament this year. But anyways, back to upsets. Another one, I think a lot of people seem to like Michigan, which I guess isn't even an upset at this point as an 11 seed. They're favored over number 6 Colorado State. So do you guys have a sexy upset pick that you're kind of backing here as we're going through?
I think I am falling victim to the South Dakota State over Providence hype. You start to dig into the numbers on the South Dakota State offense, and they're shooting the 3 at a just preposterous rate, like 43% as a team. That is notably higher than any other team in the country. I think it's like 2.5 percentage points higher than the next best 3-point shooting team. So I think it's kind of easy to talk yourself into that narrative of, well, if they could get hot, they could beat anybody. Providence, people are still kind of iffy on. That's a team that I think is pretty much unanimously been the luckiest team in the country this year. So there's a lot of reason to believe that there's backing behind, or there's a reason, I guess, why that's one of the most popular upsets. I have San Francisco over Murray State. That's a 10-7. I mean, at this point, not even really that big of an upset. But that's the thing when you're making these brackets. Like I always find myself playing it safe. In my mind, I'm like, I'm going to pick all these upsets. And then we get to the Elite 8. It's like 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 1, 5, and it's like, you have to take some chances somewhere, but it's so hard to bite that bullet and say, you know what? I think for 13, Chattanooga is going to beat Illinois, and then they're going to beat Houston, and then they're going to beat Arizona, and they're going to be in the Elite 8. And it sounds crazy, but then you look back and every year it happens, right? Something like that happens. And as soon as UMBC beat Virginia a few years ago, in the 16-1 matchup, like that to me is when you have to throw out every metric and, all those, like every team that has ever made it this far has been ranked this high in KenPom. Like UMBC beat the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament. Like that tells you all you need to know.
Yep, absolutely. And I think a big part of that one was because Virginia plays so slow, and that is the way that Providence happens to play as well, which is one of the reasons why they're only a 2-point favorite in this game, which has a lot of people kind of scratching their heads. How can a 4 seed only be a 2-point favorite over a 13? But it's because Providence, they play extremely slow. They can go ice cold at any minute. They don't blow anybody out. If you look at since January 1st, I think they have maybe 2 wins of more than 10 points. And then also last week, they were the number 1 seed in the Big East tournament. They lost by 27 points to Creighton, which was the biggest loss by a number 1 seed in Big East tournament history. So they all the signs are there for this to be an upset. But with that being said, they are a team that is dominated by graduate and senior players. Everybody in their starting lineup, and I think their first 2 guys off the bench are at least in their 4th year, if not 5th year. So you got to like that going for the Friars. I love the Ed Cooley story. He's from Providence. He finally got the job there about 10 years ago. He's brought them into the mainstream. But Yeah, I'm going to take. I like them to win this first round matchup, but I don't. I'm not feeling great about it.
I mean, I don't feel great about picking any upsets, right? I mean, unless there's, it's okay to feel great about Gonzaga beating Georgia State or Villanova taking down Delaware. But once you start getting into like the 3-14 matchups and below, I mean, sometimes it really truly can feel like a 50-50.
Yep. John, how do you feel about the Coach K and Duke storyline here going into this tournament? I mean, this is it. This is the last hurrah. Do you buy into that kind of magic here to carry Duke to like the Elite Eight or into the Final Four?
I do see them making a run. I don't know how many expected points per game that the Coach K's swan song adds to Duke's bottom line here, but it's been a program that's totally transformed over the last couple of years as far as like how they function. They used to be like that. They always had a guy that you grew a healthy disdain for over the course of 3 to 4 years. Now it's all these one and done guys, basically the Kentucky method of going about it. So they're not around long enough to really dislike these kids the way you used to dislike a Grayson Allen or a JJ Redick or that kind of thing. But it's a really talented team. They definitely have a tough draw. I mean, Davidson is not going to be an easy out in the second round, or that's again me assuming that Davidson beats Michigan State. I don't think Michigan State's all that this year, but Duke going up against Texas Tech in the Sweet 16 would be tough, and then of course you still have to contend with Gonzaga if you make it that far. So I'm going to guess that Duke makes it to the Elite Eight and bows out to Mark Few and Gonzaga, Chet Holmgren. So I guess this is a rematch of a game earlier this season, if I remember correctly, from one of those early in the year tournaments. You can't really say anything against Coach K's overall resume, but you can also, I don't think anyone hates him for that so much as just kind of his general antics and so on over the course of the years. I mean, it was so perfect on Coach K night. Most expensive tickets, like $6,000 per like average ticket at a Cameron Indoor. And then he just scolds the fans after a loss, just tells them to quiet down like it's a bunch of rowdy kindergartners or something. So that's why people are not into Coach K. And that was a perfect little distillation of it. But I think Duke makes a decent run, but I don't see this ending with Coach K going out on top.
Yeah, an all-time speech for sure. And Nick, I believe you were like the first person that ever said the name Paolo Banchero to me. I think it was like in October here on one of the fantastic Monkey Knife Fight shows. How do you feel about Banchero in this tournament?
I mean, I like him. Obviously, I've been watching him more as an NBA prospect. So, I think he's been probably more scrutinized than he should be, just because every game is like, well, how does that translate? How does that translate? And he's been under the microscope, I think, more than anybody. And in some ways, it kind of feels like he's trending in the wrong direction. He came into the season, probably when I was telling you about him back in October, it was, hey, this guy's going to be the number one pick. And he got off to a great start. He played amazing in the Champions Classic, his debut against Kentucky. He looked good going up against Chet Holmgren when they played Gonzaga and beat Gonzaga back in November around Thanksgiving. But since then, some questions have started to creep in, about his confidence. His 3-point shot has started to wane a little bit. He's down close to 30% from three on the season. He's starting to get that, like, what position is he, question mark. I saw him listed as a potential center in a mock draft I was looking at the other day. So I really like Banchero. I think when you watch him, it's a blend of a lot of really good NBA players with what he has in his game. But at the same time, he hasn't quite shown that type of streak that you need to lead a team through the NCAA tournament. I think if anything, AJ Griffin, who's going to be another top 10 pick for Duke, he's maybe been their most valuable guy through the latter half of ACC play. And, Banchero is extremely talented, but I can kind of see this going the same way as, I think when they had Jabari Parker, they ended up losing in round one to Mercer. I think Duke goes further than that, but this team just doesn't feel like it has that next gear that when things get tough, you always trust that they'll rally back or trust that they'll pull away. If anything, I think we saw the complete opposite UNC game to conclude ACC play, and then again in the ACC championship game against Virginia Tech.
5 freshmen, right? Starting for them?
Mark Williams is a sophomore.
Okay. But still,
I mean, it depends who they're starting. Roach is not a freshman either. Okay. But yeah, I mean, they have 5 or 4 freshmen who are integral parts of the team.
Yeah, so it's a very young team, and those are the teams I kind of try to stay away from in this tournament. I'm glad you both brought up Gonzaga too, because this might be my biggest pet peeve in all of sports, is that every year we do this with Gonzaga. They're number one. They're the best team in the country. Then they get to the tournament and they don't win. So I'm proposing something that this year, when they don't win, Gonzaga is never again allowed to be the number one overall seed. They're not allowed to be a number one seed ever again in the tournament, no matter what. They can be 30-0 going in, but they can never be higher than a number two, because we do this every single year. It's very similar to my college football team, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, that it's just way overhyped going into the final, the playoff, the tournament, whatever, and then they just crash and burn like they do every single year.
Yeah,
I disagree.
I really like that
I don't know.
comp. Go on, Nick.
I mean, the Notre Dame comp, I don't mind. Yeah, but I mean, I think Gonzaga has emerged from the days of, oh, they're just beating up on a bunch of terrible, 500 teams out west, and then they play the big boys and they can't contend. Like, the way they recruit as well as anybody. I think 10 years ago that argument maybe held some water because they were just that much more talented than the teams that they're playing. But I mean, even individually, like, they have raised their talent level. When you're getting the number one recruit in the country, you're getting another 5-star in Hunter Salas. You're putting guys in the NBA, top 5 draft picks in Jalen Suggs. I mean, obviously they've had some bad tournament runs. They've been beaten by teams that they probably shouldn't have been beaten by, but it's hard to win the NCAA tournament, man. I mean, we talk about Tom Izzo, all-time legend. The guy has won national championship, and it was almost 25 years ago.
Yeah, no, it's true. But I'm also at the same time, scoreboard. No, how many times have they been the number one seed, the number one overall seed? It feels like 5 out of the last 8 years, and yet no titles to show for it. So I'm throwing that proposal out there. If anybody wants to back me, please, by all means, join the bandwagon. But John, Drew Timme, I thought we'd bring this up for you, because last year he had that powerful handlebar mustache. Now he's gone full beard. Thoughts?
You don't like to see a guy exit the club like that. I think a mustache is a statement all year round, but particularly in March Madness or like in hockey, when guys grow their playoff beards, like a good mustache, I feel like really can kind of set the tone for your team, be something you can rally around. So Timme, I guess it speaks to his experience, I don't know how long he's been at Gonzaga at this point, feels like forever. But yeah, the beard, the beard really kind of speaks to that experience. And then going back overall to the Gonzaga always being the team that is overhyped and then always disappoints. I think that the argument previously about them just beating up on that soft conference, like, yes, that was true, but now there's like a new avenue to criticize them, where it's like, okay, you have all this talent and you're still not getting it done and winning it all. And I know that it's harder to win the NCAA tournament than pretty much anything else, or to win like the college football championship, for example. But Georgia, to draw another comparison, they started getting all recruiting at the same levels as the other blue bloods who were routinely winning national championships, but they weren't doing it. But eventually the talent ended up winning out. So maybe this could be the year that Gonzaga, with that collection of talent that they have, ends up getting it done. But that's just a maybe. And generally, Dan, I'm with you. I'm a Gonzaga skeptic more often than not.
Yeah, 2006, whatever, if that was the correct year, Adam Morrison crying,
Yep.
like one of my favorite sports memories. I love that moment. But anyways, Drew Timme's more or less here on MKF, 17.5 points against Georgia State on Thursday. More or less for Timme, John.
We will go with more. I think that it's going to have to be an efficient one, because I expect this to be a blowout to the point where Timmy's probably not playing much more than like 25 minutes. But I think that he can get his buckets in that time. So I'll take the more for Timme in this, what should be a lopsided first round matchup.
Nick?
Yeah, I'll go more as well. I mean, it's kind of a perfect line, because like John said, this game is, I wouldn't say I could see it being a blowout. It's going to be a blowout. So it's a matter of, if Gonzaga starts the game on like a 45-12 run, do we even see Drew Timme in the second half? But I think more is the play. I mean, if they get out to a lead like that, you would imagine that Timme is a big reason why. His size is going to give a lot of teams like this trouble. When you start getting to the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8 and the Final Four, you have guys who can match Gonzaga's size. But when you're talking a 1 versus 16, that's just not the case.
Yeah, and I think this is the biggest spread. I think it's like 24.5 points on this one. I like the more here for Timmy as well. They'll dominate first round, no problem. Moving on, Nick, your Badgers, number 3 seed, Johnny Davis. What's the latest with him? Is he good to go? And can the Badgers make a deep run?
Yeah, he's good to go. I mean, he played in their one Big Ten tournament game, which of course they lost. Looked okay in that game. Didn't play all that well, but he certainly looked fine physically. So I think, with another week now to recuperate before this first round game, Johnny Davis should be just fine. I'm expecting Wisconsin to win one game. I do think they actually got a pretty favorable draw, especially considering how they ended the year with kind of a sputter, staying as a 3 seed, and then also drawing a pretty appealing, potential second round matchup against LSU or Iowa State. I don't think either of those teams scare you all that much. I mean, obviously LSU has some length that could give Wisconsin some pretty major trouble. I could see Wisconsin, getting as far as the Sweet 16. I mean, at that point, you're talking about a matchup with Auburn, and I think Auburn would take care of business pretty easily. The Walker Kessler versus Stephen Vogt, Stephen Crowell minutes, I don't think would go all that well for Wisconsin. So I'm looking forward certainly to Friday night. That's always the goal. It's like if you can just make it to the second weekend, give you something to look forward to all week. That's great. But anything beyond Sweet 16 for me would be a pretty major exceeding expectations.
Very good. Nick, you wrote this fantastic article on rotowire.com. Some of your key guys here that you're looking at in this tournament. Anybody else that sticks out for you that you would really like in like an MKF contest? You feel confident going backing one way or another?
Round one, it's a little tough because a lot of the guys, thank you for plugging that article, but a lot of the guys I'm writing about, are on teams that are, 1 seeds or 2 seeds. So you have those same questions that we brought up, with someone like a Drew Timme. But I mean, Oscar Tshiebwe, who's going to be the National Player of the Year at Kentucky, they should probably win in a romp over St. Peter's in their first round game. But I mean, Tshiebwe is a statistical marvel. I mean, he is the all-time single season rebounds leader in the SEC. So if you could find a more or less rebounds contest with Tshiebwe, I would just automatically go more on that. He is 8 rebounds away from tying the all-time single season NCAA record for most rebounds in a season. That, of course, is held by Kenneth Faried. So there's a pretty good chance that he's going to break that record in Kentucky's first round game.
And we got 16.5 more or less for points for Tshiebwe.
I think I might go less. I think that's a situation where Kentucky's going to blow St. Peter's off the floor. And Tshiebwe is averaging 17 a game on the year. You don't really think of him as a scorer. Like, so much of his production is just, pick and roll, putbacks, point blank dunks, things like that. And he'll get plenty of opportunities, you would think, early on. But I would imagine that they'll be pretty careful with Tshiebwe and try to save him for that potential second round matchup against Murray State or San Francisco.
And John, I know you don't want to give any love to any SEC schools, but how do you feel about Kentucky and Tshiebwe?
Yeah, Tshiebwe is pretty incredible to watch. As a guy who really gets into college basketball after the new year, I always like to catch some Kentucky, and Tshiebwe is just kind of unbelievable to watch. Just such a dominant force out there. But I think when we're looking at his points total here, like Kentucky has so many other scorers that can kind of fuel the blowout that we're expecting, to where I just don't see Tshiebwe doing much other than collecting the boards, maybe a couple of putbacks here and there. But I think that he ends up something with like, a 14 and 14 type of line. So I will take the less than 16.5 points there. I just don't think that Kentucky needs to lean on him that much offensively,
especially in the first round. Yeah, I'm expecting that one to be a blowout as well. Kentucky is my national championship pick, by the way. We'll do Final Fours in a minute, but I like the way the Wildcats have been playing. I think that they, outside of the SEC tournament, that is. And it's something that another weird little stat I think I saw was that the last 5 champions didn't win their conference tournament, I think. Something like that, or 4 out of the last 5. So there's just something to keep an eye on there. Anybody else, Nick, that you really like here this weekend? Jaden Ivey, any of those kind of guys?
Yeah, I mean, I like watching Jaden Ivey. I do feel like he's maybe a little bit overrated. I think the consistency hasn't quite been there. Like on his good days, he's really, really good. There are other days where you watch him and he's just a little out of control. He struggles to assert himself. The jumper is a little bit of kind of a set push shot. It goes in, a reasonable amount, but I Purdue is such a tough team to figure out because you watch them and they look like a classic Final Four team, right? I mean, you have the dominant big man who like almost nobody can match up with, but you also know he's not going to be a great NBA player, which for some reason tends to bode well in college. Like you need guys who are just good college players. Think like Matt Howard at Butler. You have the dynamic potential top 5 pick in Ivy, have the like mysterious foreign shooter in Stefanovic. Like they have all the pieces, but then you look and they're like outside the top 100 in KenPom, adjusted defense, and like no team has ever made a deep run with that kind of metric. So yeah, I mean Purdue is one of those teams that like it feels like they have all the pieces in place, but I almost had to go out of my way to make sure I didn't have them going too far in my bracket.
Yeah. And then moving on, Providence, I'll give you a couple guys here. Nate Watson, I really like the big center, 13.5 more or less. I'm going more with Watson. South Dakota State's going to hang in this game, as you can just tell by the spread, the way they shoot. And I think the way that Providence is going to want to attack them is probably in the paint. And Nate Watson, I think, is set up for a big game. And I also like Noah Horkler as well. Rebounds. He was the Big East rebound leader for this season. And his, I think his total is only 6.5. on MKF. So I like him to go over that. He averaged close to 9 a game as well. A really impressive thing for South Dakota State, which you don't see, is they're shooting well over 40% as a team from 3. So that's just an interesting thing there. But let's kind of wrap this up here and let's go with Final 4 picks. Nick, who you got?
Well, like I said, I reserve the right to tweak my bracket until I think like 10:30 a.m. tomorrow morning. But as of now, I have Arizona, I have Auburn, I have Gonzaga, and I have Kentucky. So not really sticking my neck out all that much there. We got 2 1s and 2 2s. But I feel like that's kind of a way to at least give you a high floor. You're talking bracket pools. You're not gonna end up on the way bottom, and you're not gonna get laughed at by people that you work with for like having Indiana in the Final Four or something like that. I like Kentucky's path. We did a podcast at Rotowire earlier this week with Jason Lisk from teamrankings.com. And he noted that according to their projections, Kentucky is the best value pick if you're filling out a bracket pool in terms of, projected chance to win the tournament versus number of or percentage of the public that's picking Kentucky. They have the biggest gap. So there's a lot of reason to like Kentucky. I'm a little skeptical of this Gonzaga team. I couldn't quite get there with a team like UConn or Arkansas. This Duke team, Texas Tech is kind of a maybe for me. I have Gonzaga beating Texas Tech in the Elite 8 right now. But this Gonzaga team, despite being a 1 seed, despite being the number 1 overall seed in the tournament, I don't know. I just feel like they don't quite have that next level. I felt like last year's Gonzaga team honestly was probably better and certainly deeper than this one.
John, I know you've been doing a bunch of Twitter spaces and podcasts and all that. I almost hopped in on one of your spaces the other day just to say hello. But what do you got in your Final 4? Have we swayed anything one way or another here today?
So my Final 4 is relatively chalky. And to backtrack for just a second, I share y'all's skepticism when it comes to Purdue. I think maybe another important part of the bracketology process is who burned you recently. And I feel like Purdue I definitely had Purdue going really far not that long ago, and they ended up blowing it. So that still wearing that scar tissue from that one. So I initially had Yale beating Purdue, but I think I've since backed off a little bit. But I still don't have Purdue going very far. Look out for Texas. But my Final 4: Gonzaga versus Kentucky, Arizona versus Kansas. Arizona wins it all over Gonzaga. So I think that's the former assistant coach at Gonzaga, now at Arizona, defeating the sensei for his first national title in I believe his first season. So yeah, Arizona, they were kind of a staple of my Pac-12 After Dark basketball edition this winter, and I came away extremely impressed with my analytical eye. So give me the Cats, man.
I'm sensing a little bit of a parallel between the college football season and basketball here, with the former student beating the master and Kirby Smart taking back the Saban. So for me, I'm going Kentucky, Gonzaga, Arizona, and Wisconsin, with Kentucky beating Arizona in the finals. That's what I got. So don't forget, guys, to play that Bally bracket and take your shot at $100 million. If you can go 63-0, good for you. And you'll be a very rich person to show for that. So, guys, it's been a pleasure. Hope we can do this again soon here as we get into baseball season, NFL draft stuff, NBA playoffs, and all that. But Nick, for old time's sake, where can they follow you?
I would rather not say.
All right, no madness.
No, I'm kidding. Last name, but just switch the L to a 1. So at WHA1DN.
And John?
You can find me over on Twitter at Johns_tailgate. Also, be sure to follow at Rotowire Sports. It's our sports betting account. Nick helps out there. I help out there. And, you know, we got a ton of great stuff for March Madness this week. So check that out as well at Rotowire Sports.
All right, and you can find me at Dan Watkins Radio. Thanks for watching, guys. Good luck with your picks, and enjoy the madness.